Pwyll and Rhiannon, from the ancient tales of the Mabinogion, retold by Huw Carr. Pwyll, lord of the 7 contrevs of Dyfed, was feasting with his nobles at his chief court in Arbeth. Ever since he had found friendship with Arwen, the king of Annwyfin, the Otherworld, he and his people had lived in bliss. But there was one thing that Pwyll lacked. He had no love to share his blessed life with. For 1 year he had been changed into the likeness of Arwen, and slept every night by the side of Arwen's wife, the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Her face and her grace haunted him still. After the feast, Pwyll went out for a walk with his nobles, and their steps brought them up the rise of the mound that is called Gorsedd Arbeth. As they climbed, one of the nobles said,
"Lord, this mound has a very strange legend about it. Do you know of it?"
"No," answered Pwyll. "Tell me of it, friend."
"Well,"
continued the nobleman,
"I have heard that if someone of royal blood, such as yourself, sits and waits at the top of the mound, one of 2 mysteries will happen. Either they will receive wounds from invisible hands, or they will see a wondrous marvel."
Pwyll paused for a moment and thought. He had faced such strangeness before, when he had fought Havgan in the realm of Annwyfin. He wondered then whether Gorsedd Arbeth was another place where the other world came close to our own.
"Between me and the gods of our tribe,"
Pwyll said confidently,
"I will risk this marvel. Come, let us take our place upon the top of the mound and see whether we are worth wounds or a wonder."
They made their way to the summit of the mound, where they could see the castle of Arbeth and the lands all about it. Pwyll looked to the ancient road that ran past the base of the mound, that the Romans had made in long-forgotten days past. Then, along that very way, he saw a great grey horse approaching. Upon the horse he beheld a woman in shining gold brocade. Although her dress was more striking than anything he had ever seen before, even in the court of Arwen, it was nothing compared to the wonder of the woman who wore it. Her yellow hair streamed out as she rode, so that it looked like a ray of sunlight was about her head. For a moment, Pwyll was struck dumb. Then he cried out to his men, "By all loves, tell me who that lady is."
"Alas, we do not know, my lord,"
his followers replied. Straightway, Pwyll sent one of his men to ride to her and hail her, but by the time he reached the Roman road, the lady had ridden past the mound. The rider galloped after her as quickly as he could, but all who watched could see that however fast he rode, she always stayed the same distance ahead and could not be reached. When he had exhausted his horse, the man returned sorrowfully to Pwyll's side.
"This was a wondrous marvel indeed, Lord,"
said one of Pwyll's friends. But Pwyll only stared out for a long time in the direction where the lady had gone, and said not a word. No longer was his thoughts full of the face of Arwen's queen. He had seen with his living eyes a woman who was more beautiful still. The next day they feasted as before, but Pwyll was restless in his seat, and did not seem to enjoy himself. When he was asked what troubled him, he said,
"I do not want to be here. I want to be on the top of Gorsedd Arbeth. Perhaps the lady can even now be seen riding on the old road, and I will miss her. Would that I was there." "Then let us go there, Lord,"
said one of his friends. Before they set out, Pwyll went to the best of his riders, giving to him the fastest horse in the kingdom. They travelled up the winding path to the summit of Gorsedd Aberth, and came to sit where they had done so the day before. The moment they turned to look at the ancient road, they saw again at once the beautiful lady on her noble horse, seemingly travelling at the same gentle pace.
Quick!
Pwyll called to his fastest rider.
Race to her now, and ask her to come to me.
Immediately the lad leapt into his saddle, but already she had passed the mound, where only a moment before she had been seen approaching it. Pwyll and his people watched as the lad made his way as quickly as he could to the road. But even though the lady never seemed to break beyond a gentle canter, the lad on his horse, which they could see was galloping for all it was worth, never even drew close to her. In the end, the fastest rider in the kingdom had been vanquished by the woman, and he had to return to Pwyll's side.
Do not be angry with yourself,
Pwyll said to the rider.
It is clear that no one has the power to catch her. Surely she is one of the people of the Otherworld.
Yet half to himself he said,
Yet between me and our gods, she had some reason to come here. A curse be upon my head if I do not find out the reason.
That night Pwyll could not sleep. He kept pacing to his window in the dark to look out upon Gorsedd Aberth, silver and grey under the moon and stars. In the morning he would not eat. So passed his day, in which his people could not enthuse him or distract him from constantly desiring to look in the direction of the mound and the ancient road. At last, one of Pwyll's friends came to him and said,
It is clear, Lord, that you will never be content until you solve the mystery of the beautiful lady and the mound. Let us waste no more time here. Come, we will go with a small company and the best of horses together. If you do not see her again, perhaps you will receive blows instead that will be worthy of the unhappy look that is on your face.
The moment they set foot on the top of the mound, they again saw the lady in gold upon the same horse and setting the same gentle pace. Pwyll leapt at once into the saddle and set out. No sooner had he done this than she was past where the path met the road. Down to the Roman way he drove his horse until he saw the lady ahead of him. He gave his horse the prick of his spurs and set it at once to a spirited gallop, thinking that he may catch her. His horse's hooves thundered beneath him, and the horse's breath was loud in his ears. Though he rode so that the horse was almost spent, still he drew no closer to her. All efforts seemed fruitless. In despair he cried out,
Lady, for the sake of he who you love best, please stop and speak with me.
As soon as he had cried out these words, the lady reined her horse and awaited him to catch up with her. When he reached her, he saw there was a wry smile on her pretty face.
Gladly I will,
she said with a laugh.
But it would have been better for your horse if you had called to me sooner.
Pwyll looked on her fully and saw that she truly was one of the people of the Otherworld. Like Goron, who he had first met in Glenkeith, her beauty was far beyond the form of mortals. Under the brightness of her eyes and the power of her smile, he found it hard to gaze upon her for long without blushing.
Where do you come from, lady?
He asked.
And where are you going? I have come from my father's house, and I have come to see you. 3 times I have done so, and only now you come to speak to me.
Pwyll's heart lifted at the thought she wanted to see him, but he was equally abashed that he had not ridden after her in the first place.
I see now I was a fool for it, but by my heart I will be a fool no longer. Tell me now, if you have come to seek me, who you are and what I might do for you.
The lady held her head high and said,
I am RHIANNON, daughter of Huw the Old. In my father's realm I have been content, until I saw you riding with King Oron. When I saw you, and learned of the deeds you did in freeing him from his never-ceasing battle with Havgan, I knew I had looked on the man I could love best.
By all the gods, I am glad to hear it, said Pwyll, beaming. Rhiannon held up her slender hand to silence him.
Do not rejoice yet. Against my will, I am being given to another man who I do not love. I have never wanted a husband until the day I saw you. It was then I knew what I wanted. If you will come before my father, though, and show your alliance with Oron, king of Annoivin, then I am sure he will let me have what I want. Lady Rhiannon, I want nothing more than to ride to your court now. No,
Rhiannon said determinedly.
There are reparations to be made if I refuse the man who has asked for me. I will prepare a great feast in the right season a year from today. Come then with the greatest of your warriors and those of Oron's court, and claim me then. Then you will take me to bed that night, and you shall be my king. That is, if you want me.
Pwyll said, If I had the choice of all the women in the world, there is none I would choose who is your equal. I choose you.
Good.
Rhiannon laughed delightedly. Before she gave her horse his head, she told him how to find the court of Huw the Old, her father.
Do not forsake me,
she cautioned.
Keep your promise.
I will, Pwyll assured her, and returned to the castle of Arbeth wearing a wide smile.
How could any man not want to keep such a promise?
He asked himself. A year of anticipation passed, and Pwyll set out with a colourful company of nobles and warriors from his court, accompanied by many of the mighty of the court of Oron, 100 in total. They were in high spirits as they rode through the day and arrived at the court of Huw the Old in the early evening. There was great rejoicing as the mighty households joined together in feasting. Rhiannon wore a dress that magnified her beauty. Her hair was a perfect cascade of gold, and her eyes were as bright as the leaves of a spring oak. Pwyll sat at her side, laughing with Rhiannon, hardly ever breaking his eyes from her. As the night drew on, the need to take her to bed pounded inside of him. He begged leave of her father to take her from the hall so that they may join together and be bonded in love as man and wife.
Take her with you now, and leave this hall as my son,
said the great voice of Huw. As Pwyll rose and took Rhiannon's hand to lead her away, a voice called out from among the feasting guests. Pwyll tore his eyes from Rhiannon to see a tall youth dressed in fine silk.
Come, friend, he said. Why do you stand where there is fine wine and food fit for all? Sit and take your fill as our guest.
I cannot,
said the lad, his face half hidden in a hood.
For I am here as a suppliant in need. I cannot sit nor leave until my errand is fulfilled.
By his fine voice, Pwyll knew this lad was of noble blood, and it pained him to know that any noble household had fallen on hard times.
Then, friend, you will ask of me what you need, and I will gladly give it and fulfill your errand. And you said you would never again be a fool,
Rhiannon said to Pwyll in disgust.
Do you know who you were speaking to?
Shocked, Pwyll could not find words to reply, but the youth said,
Lady, all the nobles gathered here heard him say he would fulfill my errand.
With a dry mouth, Pwyll turned to face the lad again.
What is it that you ask of me then?
You are about to sleep tonight with the woman I love best,
the lad said, and lowered his hood to reveal his face. He smiled wryly and said,
I ask for her and for the preparations of this feast, which should have been mine in the first place.
Pwyll fell silent,
Now you have remembered how to keep your mouth closed,
said Rhiannon.
You best keep it so before you give my father away too. This lad is Pwyll, son of Clyd, who I was being given to against my will. You are beautiful to look at, Pwyll, but I never guessed you could be so dull-witted.
How was I to know?
Pwyll began, but again his voice failed him. Rhiannon took his hands in hers.
Even though you are a dullard, my love, I still love only you. Don't say anything more. You have promised in front of my father and all the nobles, and you must give what you have promised.
With her cool hands in his, Pwyll began to shake as a rage came upon him.
How can I? I would rather die than see you with someone you do not love. I will.
He stammered and reached for his sword.
No,
Rhiannon admonished him.
that is not the way.
She turned then to Pwyll and said,
Please, give me one moment to say farewell to Pwyll. If I am to be yours, I must shut off my love for this man. Give me but a moment to speak with him.
Pwyll nodded his agreement, and Rhiannon took Pwyll to the far corner of the great hall, still with one hand in his. The other she placed upon a wooden chest, which she opened. She drew out a small leather bag and pressed it into Pwyll's hands. Then she bent close to his cheek and whispered in his ear.
This is what I want you to do.
Come now,
Called out Pwyll when he saw Rhiannon giving Pwyll a final kiss.
I have been patient enough. By the customs of our people, no suppliant can be turned away at a feast. How long am I to be kept waiting? It is high time that I receive an answer to my request.
Rhiannon returned to her father's side and said,
As I am no longer to sleep with Pwyll tonight, it is not his place to give anything that is not his. And this feast was given for the people he brought. It is not right that it should be taken from them. But I will make you another feast, greater than this, and after that you will sleep with me, and I shall be yours, and you mine.
Tell me when this is to be,
said Pwyll eagerly.
A year from tonight.
Rhiannon answered, and all the nobles agreed upon it. Pwyll set out for his kingdom, and Pwyll returned with sadness to Dyfed. A year later, Pwyll and his retinue returned, and he sat at Rhiannon's side as Pwyll had done. If Rhiannon did not love him, she put on a good show of it, and when the feast was high, Pwyll was merry with the wine, and the thought that soon he would be in bed with Rhiannon, the most beautiful woman in the world. The minstrels had paused for the time when it was traditional for suppliants to come and ask requests of the nobles. Before Pwyll and Rhiannon came a shabby band, dressed in all but rags. One came forward from among them and asked to have his request heard.
By the gods of my tribe,
said Pwyll, raising his cup high so that wine splashed from the rim.
You are welcome. What do you want of me?
Great lord,
said the beggarly man,
I am a suppliant, and I ask for your mercy upon me and my friends.
What is your request, friend?
asked Pwyll.
And if it is reasonable, I swear before the nobles here that I will grant it.
It is reasonable indeed,
said the beggar, and held up a little bag.
All I ask is enough food from your table to fill up this bag.
Such a modest request.
Goal said, and motioned servants to bring food to the beggar.
You will have all you can hold in the bag.
Food was brought on golden plates, and the beggar opened up the little bag to take the food. Yet, however much was put in, the bag did not seem to stretch, or indeed to be filled. Plate after plate was emptied into the bag with no sign of the bag overflowing, until Goal stood up and said,
Enough of this! You have had enough!
But Lord, you said I can have all I can hold in the bag.
The beggar reminded him.
Will it ever be full?
Goal asked, incensed.
Lord, there is only one way for this bag to be filled,
the beggar said.
and it is this. If a strong, brave, and mighty nobleman presses the food down with both feet and commands, "This is enough,"
Rhiannon stood and said to Goal,
Champion, only you are fit for such a task, as the most noble man here.
Truly,
said Goal. He came and stood before the beggar, who placed the bag down on the ground and opened it as widely as he could, so that Goal could lift his feet and place them into the bag. The moment he was standing in the bag and began to cry out in a loud voice,
this is enough.
the beggar suddenly lifted the bag so it was over Goal's head, and he was head over heels inside. The beggar closed it and knotted it tight, then wrenched off his hood to reveal Pwyll. Pwyll put a hunting horn to his lips and blew. The other men threw off their rags and uncovered their armor and weapons beneath. And 100 others of Pwyll's and Aron's soldiers came into the hall, taking prisoner of Goal's men. The warriors of Pwyll who stood by him each took a turn to kick at the bag.
Hoy, what's in here?
Said one, smiling.
Oh, there is nothing but a badger.
Another said. The company found this so funny that it all began to play at beating the badger who struggled in the bag, and so the game of Badger in the Bag was first played.
Lord,
Came a muffled voice from within the bag.
this is no dignified end for me to die tied up in a bag.
What will you swear to be freed from this death?
Pwyll asked. The man in the bag was silent for a time, and then he said,
Whatever you ask of me, Lord, that is in my power, I will give it, if you will free me.
Then I ask you to give up your claim on Rhiannon. She does not love you, and no woman should be with a man she does not love. Do you agree?
Pwyll said.
You speak truly.
Said the man in the bag.
I give up my claim on her, and will never again seek to take a woman who does not love me.
Ask that he take no revenge either,
Said Rhiannon to Pwyll.
for you know he will be furious that you have tricked him, even as he tricked you. And so, like men, you will both go on forever, taking revenge for the revenge that someone did because of the revenge, and so on until the end of the world.
They made Goal swear to never take revenge against Pwyll or Rhiannon or any of their people, either personally or through the action of any other. Then Goal was released from the bag, and he arose covered in bruises and food. And even though he had suffered a great humiliation, he was true to his word. Goal's men were permitted to leave unharmed, and the feast struck up again with renewed vigor, as all were agreed that they had never seen a feast that was its like. And when the time of feasting came to an end, Pwyll at last took Rhiannon to her chamber, where they spent the night and the following day in pleasure and delight. Here ends the tale of Pwyll and Rhiannon. Next time I will tell you the story of the birth of their son and the mysterious abduction that followed after.